So I know this is not a typical week in the fact that we were supposed to be face to face and weather is not going to allow us to do that. So right off the bat, I want to clarify a couple of things that I did post on Blackboard, but I also want to make sure that I just kind of hit it again so people are aware of what kind of the expectations are. So we are not meeting this evening, but I am not going to change our schedule in the fact that I'm not going to switch any of the hybrids and any of the face-to-face meetings. When I put that schedule out, I know that people immediately take care of childcare, plan work hours and things like that, knowing that they have those days. And I don't want to cause a lot of problems for people in having to go back and re-alter all of those schedules. So I will alter face-to-face meetings that we have left to accommodate the fact that we lost this evening as a face-to-face meeting. So the schedule is going to stay the same from here on out. Initially, I told you guys that your assignment for today was not to be emailed. I am going to change that, and I will give you a due date to get that emailed to me so that I can get those corrected, graded, and taken care of, and you're not hanging on to those until the next time that we do meet face to face. With that, we are going to go into the second part of our digestive chapter. So last time we really focused on the anatomy side of things and looking at the structures, the position, the shape, all of that, and kind of explaining some of the background information on that. This time we're going to come back and we're going to look a little bit more on the physiology side, and in doing that, we're going to pull in a lot of nutrition stuff. And I know you guys take a class on nutrition, so hopefully some of this will be very familiar to you and just kind of reinforce those things that you have talked about in that class as well. So when we initially start looking at the process of digestion, I think one of the biggest things is that people really misunderstand digestion and what we're trying to accomplish. And with the process of digestion, there is nothing that you put into your body that is in the right form that it could be immediately used. And because of that, our body has to go through a series of steps to take the foods we give it and convert it into something that we can actually use. And if you think about your diet yesterday, what you ate from the time you got up until the time you went to bed, and think about that, whether it was some toast in the morning, a hamburger and fries, at some point a salad. And if you try and immediately think of what part of your body is made of any one of those foods, there is nothing in our body that is made out of toast. There's nothing in our body that's made out of hamburger and fries. So the process of digestion is really taking the foods we give it that has the materials it needs, but converting them into a usable form. And so if you look at something like sugar, glucose, if you know the chemical formula for glucose, it's C6H12O6. So through the process of digestion, what our body is going to do is it's going to take that molecule, those 6 carbons, those 12 hydrogens, those 6 oxygens, and instead of allowing it to remain as a molecule and all linked together, the whole goal of digestion is to take and separate those 3 from each other and get all of the carbons off by themselves, get all of the hydrogens off by themselves, and get all of the oxygen off by itself. And going back to that idea that you have vitamins and minerals and all these other things that are present in the foods that you're putting into your body, but we need to be able to rebuild it in a way that makes sense for our body. So if we can take those foods and we can separate out all of those elements that are present in the food that we eat, then what our body can do is it can take and rebuild those materials the way that is needed. It can pull some of the carbon, it can pull some of the oxygen. If you drink some milk and you have some calcium, it can take some of that calcium and it can build it and reform it into something that is usable, something that our bodies do need. So the entire process of digestion is simply to, like I said, take the foods, break them down, and then pick and choose what materials we need, what vitamins we need, and rebuild that into our cell membranes, our organelles, our DNA. So just to kind of reinforce that idea of digestion and what exactly is happening. So, in the process of digestion, there's a very specific way in which it has to happen. So, when you guys put food into your mouth, the first thing that's going to happen is we're going to coat that food with a digestive enzyme known as amylase. And amylase is going to target anything that is a simple sugar or a complex carbohydrate. So things like glucose, fructose, sucrose, those sugars that you would find in candy bars, cake, things like that, that is going to be your simple sugars immediately digested in your mouth. Then you are going to have your complex carbohydrates, and those are going to be more of your starches. So your like what you would find in potatoes or what you would find in bread. The difference between your simple sugars and your complex sugars is that the simple ones are shorter chains. So I gave you the example of C6H12O6. You've got three that are linked together. Complex carbohydrates are going to still be made out of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, but the number of them is going to be much more. And so they're much longer chains. So with your simple sugars, they're short chains, quick to break down. Your complex carbohydrates, longer chains, they're going to take a longer period of time to break down. So if you hear of somebody that is carbohydrate loading, they're not using candy bars and things like that to carbohydrate load. You will burn through that energy in about 20 to 30 minutes after ingesting it. Your carbohydrate loading is going to be from your complex carbs, those long chains, because they do take longer to break down. So your body gets sustained energy over a longer period of time. But all of that digestion is going to immediately begin in your mouth. Now, the other thing with carbohydrates is they are going to offer about 4.1 calories for every single gram that you eat. So 1 gram of carbohydrate is going to equate to 4.1 calories that you are ingesting. The second piece that we have are the proteins. Proteins are also going to be 4.1 calories for every single gram that you eat. They do not get digested until they get into your stomach. So when they get to your stomach, they're introduced to pepsin. Pepsin is a digestive enzyme that is geared at breaking down protein-based foods into those individual components like we talked about. And then the last stage is going to be in your small intestine when the food that you eat is going to be introduced to bile. And bile is going to emulsify fat. So it's going to break down, does not digest. This is a different process. Digestion is breaking everything down into its individual components. Emulsification is just taking a really large globule and breaking it down into smaller globules, but it's not breaking it into the individual elements that are present in fat. So digesting carbs in the mouth, digesting proteins in the stomach, and emulsifying fat in the small intestine. Now, it's important that that amylase is introduced in our mouth because carbohydrates, we are able to get into our bloodstream very, very quickly. So if we need a quick source of energy, the fact that that digestive process happens immediately in our mouth just allows us to transition into our bloodstream and access it very, very quickly. The proteins, they are a little bit different. We typically do not use our proteins as an energy source, meaning we are not looking at the calories that are coming in from proteins as a way to fuel our bodies and to fuel our cells and keep them working. Your body will go to very great lengths not to use proteins as an energy source. And the reason for that is protein is used in everything as far as a building block for your cells, for your organelles, for DNA, for tissues. And so because we need so much protein to build all of those structures, we don't have to want to rely on it as an energy source as well and make the body pick and choose if it's going to supply us with energy or if it's going to build the materials that our body actually needs. So your energy sources are really going to come down to the carbs that you eat and the fats that you eat. Carbs are going to get used first. So in a given day, any calories that come in that are carb-based calories, you are going to burn through those first. Anything that comes in that is fat-based is going to get used second. So diets like Atkins diet, where you have a low carb diet, the idea behind that is if you're not giving yourself a lot of carbs to eat, you're not going to have a lot of those to burn through, and you'll jump to the fats and start burning off the fats. So once you burn through your carb calories, and then once you burn through your fat calories for a given day, then you will go into your fat reserves. So any energy that you have stored, your body is going to start tapping into and accessing those. We're still not touching the proteins. With your fat reserves, everybody, one human to the next, we pretty much all have the same number of fat cells in our body. It's the size of the fat cells that will differ from one person to the next. And we do not give up our excess calories. So if you have a day where you took in 2,000 calories, but you only burned off 15, those 500 calories are not just going to get sloughed off out of the body. We are going to store those 500 calories. And the reason for that is a lot of our background is still geared toward a time where we didn't know when and if our next meal was going to come. So in the history of humans, there obviously were not always grocery stores, there were not drive-throughs. You didn't know where your next meal was going to come from, and you were the one that had to go out and find it. So you had to hunt your food, you had to find your food, and if food was scarce and not available, the body eventually evolved and designed a way that we could kind of preserve that excess energy. So for that reason, that is why to this day, we don't give up any excess calories. So if you take in more than you burn off, the body's going to hold that on reserve. Some of that will get stored in the form of glycogen, which is a sugar reserve or sugar store, and some of that will then get stored as fat. So the more days that we have where we're taking in more calories than we're burning off, we're going to start to see that change in the size of our fat cells, so that if we ever hit a period where food is not readily available, then we'll tap into those fat reserves. So you burn off your carbs first, then you burn off your fats from that day. And then if you still need more calories, you're going to tap into your glycogen reserves, and you're going to tap into your fat reserves. If you still need calories after that, then you will go to protein as an energy source. The problem with using protein as an energy source is that because it's built into our cells, it's built into our tissues, in order to access it as an energy source, we have to break down those tissues. And when you're looking at probably one of the best reserves of protein in the human body, it's in muscles. So your skeletal muscles, your smooth muscle, and your cardiac muscle. So if we're having to use those proteins as an energy source, we are destroying our skeletal muscle, we're destroying our smooth muscle, we're destroying our cardiac muscle. And when that happens over an extended period of time, it can do damage to your heart. It's not uncommon, if you have heard stories about people that have eating disorders, that ultimately what happens is they have a heart attack or they go into cardiac arrest, because for such a long period of time they've been having to pull that energy from proteins embedded in their muscle tissue. They did enough damage to their heart, it couldn't function the way that it was supposed to anymore. So we really use that as a last resort for energy. The other thing is, with the exchange of calories, burning off more calories than you take in or vice versa, is not understanding how the body really reacts to that. So when we look at trying to lose weight, typically it took a long time to put the weight on, and we want to take the weight off very quickly. So we do really drastic things in order to try and get that weight to come off very quickly. And our body, again, doesn't read that as we're just trying to lose weight for this period of time. Your body reads it as, we don't have access to food anymore, or we don't have enough access to food. And so it will put into effect a series of steps to combat against that. And one of the first things that the body will do is it will drop the metabolism. So if it feels like it is stressed because it's not getting enough food, your body's not getting enough calories, it will lower your metabolism. It will lower how hard your cells are working to try and conserve what calories you do have coming in. We've just completely defeated what we're trying to do. If we're trying to lose weight, we want our metabolism to stay high and burn consistently throughout the day so that we are more likely to drop the weight that we're trying to get off. But if we do it very drastically, cutting significant amount of calories and drop our metabolism level because of that, like I said, we're working against ourselves. It's not uncommon for somebody who's trying to lose weight to initially be very successful and they lose a lot of weight. And then you always hear the horror story of, I dropped all this weight, and then when I went off the diet, I gained it all back plus some. And the reason for that plus some is because you put your body into starvation mode. Your metabolism dropped to react to that. And then after you came off the diet, your body is going to stay in that starvation mode. Your metabolism is going to stay low. And so you might go back to normal eating, but your body is now conserving as much as it possibly can and storing that immediately to fat. And so that's where you see not only the weight come back, but that additional weight on top of it. So again, just people not understanding fully how the body works and what the body will do to try and make sure that you have the calories you need and conserve if it feels like it is stressed out. Because like I said, your body doesn't know what you're trying to do. Your body simply sees it as, we don't have access to food anymore, and we don't know when we're going to have access to it again. So we're going to do whatever we can to maintain. The last thing that we talked about one of the things that I introduced to you guys last time and kind of had you work with the vitamins. We have two main types of vitamins in the human body, with water and fat soluble vitamins. So with the water soluble vitamins, these are going to be a group of vitamins in which we do not store them. They dissolve in water, so we can't store them in our body. So you have to eat them on a regular basis and keep introducing them on a daily basis, because if you have a day where you eat a ton of a water soluble vitamin, it's not going to carry over and stay with you, and you're not going to have extra for the next day. So on a regular basis, every time you go to the restroom, any excess of a particular water soluble vitamin will get flushed out. Your water soluble vitamins are going to include your B group vitamins. There are several Bs, as well as your vitamin C. And so your vitamin Bs are really going to focus or work with your metabolism and making sure that your metabolism was working correctly. Your vitamin C is going to work to support your immune system. On the other side of that, your fat solubles are going to be a little bit different in the fact that they actually can be absorbed into your tissues. And so you can hang on to them. If you ever have excess of a particular vitamin, it will get stored in your tissue. And so while that has some benefits to it, it also means that you can overdose on this particular vitamin. And so you have to be careful about your intake. You have 4 fat solubles, A, D, E, and K. And we're going to do a little bit more work with these. That was actually one of the things we were going to do tonight, is take a look at the fat soluble, water solubles, and do some things with them. And I would like to incorporate that and bring it into one of our later face-to-face meetings. But just understanding the difference. Water soluble dissolves in water. And if you think about the water content in the human body, we can't hang on to those. Your fat solubles, that can be absorbed into your fat tissue. And so you can have a small reserve of your A, D, E, and K vitamins. Now, with the vitamins, if you look at the naming, we have vitamin A, we have a bunch of B vitamins, and then we have our C, D, E, and then we take a little bit of a jump, and all of a sudden we go to K. The reason for that is when they initially started identifying vitamins, they were done alphabetically, so vitamin A, B, C, on down the line. And as they started to learn more about the vitamins, they realized that they had identified some things as vitamins that were actually not. And so they were removed from the vitamin list, but they didn't change the sequence. So the reason that we don't have a vitamin F, there was at one point a vitamin F, and then through learning more, they realized that it wasn't actually a vitamin, so they pulled it out. And that's why you see the gaps in the naming of the vitamins, is for that reason. Um, Please check Blackboard. There will be an assignment for the upcoming week. So make sure that you check and get that assignment taken care of. Please make sure that you email your vitamin assignment from last week in. And like I said, I will change the due date on that so that you guys have some time to get that into me. But please do not wait until our next face-to-face meeting on getting that vitamin assignment turned in. Also, please make sure that our next face-to-face, you do bring your muscle sheets. We will be working with the muscles and reviewing those and talking about those, getting ready for your final exam.